Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wine.com Experiences. I'm Gwendolyn Osborne. Today, we will be tasting through 3 Italian wines, and to be more specific, 3 wines that are members of the Italian Signature Wines Academy. And if you're not familiar with this organization, the Italian Signature Wines Academy is a collective of family-owned wineries, and kind of they are there to really act as the guardian and to promote the authenticity of these Italian wines owned by wonderful families. And so these 3 wines are just excellent examples of that authenticity and of that family-centered wine field. So the wines that we are tasting tonight are the Via Sandi Prosecco, the Feudi De San Gregorio, Greco di Tufo, and the Fontanafredda Serralunga d'Alba Barolo. So if you purchase this trio ahead of time from Wine.com, fantastic. Please go ahead and make sure they're open, get them into some glassware. If you want to start tasting while we're talking about the wines before we get to the tasting, please feel free. Don't want you to feel like you have to wait. And of course, as you'll see, we are actually touring through Italy here for all 3 of these wines in 3 different areas. If you don't have the wines, the trio is still available on Wine.com, and this video will live on our Wine.com YouTube channel, which you should absolutely subscribe to, because that is where you will find out about upcoming tastings and be able to watch our previous tastings on demand. So let's bring in our guests, multiple. From Via Sandi, we have brand ambassador and the producer's daughter, Diva Moretti Poligato. From Feudi De San Gregorio, we have producer Antonio Capaldo. And from Fontanafredda, managing director Roberto Bruno. Good evening, or kind of morning for you guys.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, what's day and night for everybody, right? So welcome to you all. Thank you so much for being here to talk about your wine, share some stories, and staying up late to join us. So welcome.
Thank you.
So I wanted to start off kind of talking a little bit about the Italian Signature Wines Academy and kind of what it means to you. And so Diva, I'm going to start this question off with you, kind of, because you're part of the family, you're brand ambassador, your daughter, the producer. What do you see as the benefits of being part of a family-owned winery and part of this organization?
Good evening, everybody. The most important benefit is that each winery, which is part of Italian Signature Wine Academy, represents a very well-known brand of Italian wineries belonging all to families. Therefore, we share the same values, and the fact that we work together is a cultural opportunity to show to the world the most important wine territories of Italy. And also the fact that we are all family-owned wineries also mean that there will always be a sense of continuity of these values that come from one generation to another.
Yeah, that's very true, and that's an important part, being part of the family and a family business. Antonio, why is this organization important to Feudi De San Gregorio?
It is helping us to, in a way, to translate our vision into action. I think being a family-owned winery like we are ensures you have to work for the long term, for the future generations. And I think partnering with other wineries that have the same approach help, really translating this vision into actions, into commercial actions, into marketing actions. So is a wonderful partnership that is, we have so much in common, and we can share this with our clients.
Yes, 2 heads are better than one, so everybody going in with the same values. And Roberto, with Fontanafredda, I mean, you have such a long history. How is this organization still relevant to you and your winery today?
Yeah, it was a great idea, in my opinion, when we started this project in 2014, when we thought, and we are still thinking, then together we are much stronger than alone, much relevant than alone, especially when we look at the international markets, because our company, Fontanafredda, can represent a region in Italy which is Piedmont, an appellation which is Barolo, but we cannot represent Italy because Italy is the land of biodiversity. And if we want to represent the made in Italy in the world, we need to express this kind of diversity, this kind of variety. And so this is exactly the purpose, the aim, since the beginning of this venture, this alliance, to bring the best Italian appellations, the best Italian culture in terms of wine culture to the world, and to represent and to promote this culture in all possible way, in terms of business, but it's also in terms of education, in terms of promotion. So this was originally, but this still is our main objective, our main purpose.
I love that. So it's, you've got these centered family and shared values, the alliance, I love that word, and also Antonio, as you said, better together. So yes, you're all kind of working toward the same goal, but also keeping your own individuality, which is beautiful. And we have three incredible, very individual wines to talk about today. So we will start with the Prosecco, the Via Sandi Prosecco. Diva, let's get a little acquainted with Via Sandi. Tell us a little bit about the history of the property there.
So the origin of our winery dates back to the 1950s, more or less, when my grandfather started planting vineyards in this area where it wasn't famous for Prosecco yet. And then my father continued the family tradition, expanding the trade and investing a lot, especially in the vineyards. And in fact, nowadays, my family own about 6 wine estates in every single Prosecco denomination, including the region of Friuli. And then the brand Villa Sandi was then introduced in the 1980s, and it was dedicated to the villa, which is located next to our winery, and it is our headquarters. It is a Palladian-style villa built in 1622 that my family had refurbished and brought to the old splendor.
Beautiful. Can people visit there?
Definitely, yeah, we have a visitor every day of the year. And the last image you got to see was the underground cellar where we keep our traditional method wines.
Okay, traditional method wines. Okay, we'll get into that. I know you have just so many different levels and layers of wine, sparkling and a couple still. So, but for Prosecco, because Prosecco has been around at least since I got into wine 25-ish years ago, but it's just really evolved. Prosecco has evolved so much, I think, especially from Prosecco producers and kind of how they want people to see and understand Prosecco. So through this evolution the past couple of decades, maybe can you speak a little bit to how it's grown over the past 15 or 20 years?
Yeah, so there's a key date for the evolution of Prosecco, which was year 2009. And in this year, there was the introduction of the consortium of Prosecco DOC, DOC. And also in this year, there was the enlargement of the area to almost all the region of Veneto and Friuli. And from this date, the name of the grape came back to the original one, which was Glera, not Prosecco anymore. And the name Prosecco only refers to the final product bottle with the DOC denomination on. And for example, it is a similar situation that you find in Tuscany, where you have the name of the grape Sangiovese and the name of the wine Chianti. And Prosecco is the Italian wine that in the last 10 years has been on fire, literally. This is because of many different reasons. For example, there's a general positive trend of bubbles in the world, and also the inner qualities of Prosecco, because Prosecco is a very democratic wine. It is good for every occasion. It is good for every person and every cuisine, because it's very versatile in its pairings. And it's not just a food-friendly wine, because it can be enjoyed as well on celebration, birthdays, or just aperitifs. And we try to maximize all these distinctive characteristics of Prosecco. And one of the major characteristics of Prosecco, of Glera grape, is the freshness. In fact, our hashtag is as fresh as possible. And it also, the name of our wine, Il Fresco, takes the name of that, because Il Fresco in Italian means the fresh one. And in order to do that, to maintain this freshness, we decide to chill the mast after the pressing. And in this way, we have the same freshness that you have during the harvest time all year around. And for example, afterwards, you will taste the other wines from our friends of Italian Signature Wine Academy, where the maturation of the wine themselves play a very important role in the quality of the wines. But in Prosecco is the opposite, because the fresher, the better.
Sure. And so this wine, the Prosecco DOC we are drinking today, and how was that made? Was this produced in, I guess, what we in America, we call the tank method? Is that how it was produced? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it is produced in a Charmat method. And in order to produce a Prosecco, we need to have a minimum of 85% of glera. And we produce our Prosecco mainly with glera, but can be also a small addition of native grape varieties or Pinot Bianco and Chardonnay, depending on the vintage. And we decide that to have a continuity on the taste of the product. And the same blend, we use it for our, what, sorry?
Sorry, I was just going to ask which it was, but you're getting to that. Go ahead, continue on.
No, I was just saying that the same blend, we use it for our organic Prosecco, which follows special government laws to have this specific certification.
And so this is 85% glera, you said?
Correct.
And 15% Chardonnay or Pinot Bianco, or both?
Between Chardonnay and Pinot Bianco.
Okay, beautiful. Well, let's taste it, and kind of maybe as we do, tell us a little bit about, how it's reflecting that the method, the Charmat method, and how that adds to the freshness as well as the grapes and where it's coming from.
So looking at the glass here, the perlage is very pale and persistent. We have very small bubbles coming from our unique method of production and of the refrigerated mast, and also our time of fermentation, which is less than 75 days. Normally, Prosecco has to be in the tank for about 30 days.
Okay,
then
you do it longer.
At the nose, we have the typical fruits such as apple, pear. I can smell some peach as well. And in the taste, we have the same flavor that we have in the nose. So we have this apple, this pear, some peach again. And then we have this pleasant acidity, which invites you to have straight away another glass.
Yes, straight away another glass. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's this fresh. It's almost like being at a farmer's market with cut fresh fruit to taste. It's just so many ripe aromas.
This is what reflects the name of the wine itself, because Il Fresco, the fresh one.
Yes, it is. It is like biting into a juicy peach or apple. It is wonderfully fresh, but I love the acidity also. And yes, that finish just makes you want another sip. Or as Italian wine is very intertwined with food, maybe something to eat. I know Prosecco is kind of an everyday, any dinner, anytime kind of wine, which I love. But do you have any favorite pairings for this wine?
So Prosecco has the great characteristic to pair well with every cuisine in the world. I get to travel a lot for my job, and I appreciate how this wine pairs easily with every cuisine, from tempura, sushi, when you travel to Japan, for example. But also in Italy, my favorite pairings are the simple Italian antipasti, such as cold cuts, cheeses, or maybe a risotto with prawn and zucchini will be a great pairing.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And my personal favorite is Prosecco and popcorn. We're in the US, and you have popcorn, especially if you have some truffle salt on the popcorn. Oh my gosh, it's fantastic. It's something about the salty and everything, because you can just keep drinking it throughout, movie night, just Prosecco popcorn. It's perfect.
I will bring the truffle, Gwendolyn.
Sorry?
I will bring the truffles from
Yes,
Alba.
please.
Okay?
Can I come in like 2 months? Is it 2 months when truffles are coming out?
Yeah, we are at the beginning of the season. So
Yeah, God, the last time I was in Italy was truffle season, and I think I ate pasta with truffles, I think 3 times in one day. It was so it's well worth it. So, well, thank you, Diva. This is delicious, delightful, wonderful wine, and a great representation of the quality, freshness, easy drinkiness of great Prosecco. So thank you.
Thank you.
So we are going on to Campagna. So Antonio, we're moving to your family's wine, Feudi De San Gregorio, Greco de Tufo. I remember discovering this grape in place, because it's the grape of the place. I guess it was like probably 12 or 15 years ago. And I mean, this is kind of in my discovery of all these different interesting white wines of Italy. And I just fell in love with this wine. So, but first, before we get into that, I kind of want to talk, we're in Campagna here, the south of Italy, near the Butte. And I wanted to kind of get a little bit of an idea. Your family established the winery in 1986, but what was the mission for your family then, almost 40 years ago in Campagna?
So the mission was pretty simple because there was an earthquake that devastated the area in 1980. The story gets better and now it starts sad, but then it gets much more enthusiastic later. We had an earthquake that devastated the area in 1980, and my family was not into wine at the time. And my dad and my uncle, so I'm the second generation, they decided to invest back in their homeland in something that traditionally was done in our area. So growing vines to produce grapes to make wines. And the mission was clearly to bring our indigenous varietals all around the world. So for me, I'm particularly happy and thank you for having me here tonight because it's an opportunity to accomplish this mission even more. And to do that, not just, by playing the card of the tradition, which is, of course, typical of Italy, but indeed typically of the South, but considering that we started relatively, recently, because in Italy, everybody has at least 2 centuries of history.
Yeah, in comparison to Italy, you're pretty young. Yeah.
We did not pretend to have an enormous history. We try to be very contemporary in the approach, which means that we like this comparison with art. We like to think of ourselves without any pretension. We like to think of ourselves that we have an incredible legacy and heritage, which is our past, but we make wines that need to last for the future, like an artistic piece, but also for the consumer of today. That's why we have a very contemporary architectural winery. We also have labels that are quite immediate and intriguing, and that's also why our style of wine is quite modern. So the mission, in a nutshell, is bring into the modern time and contemporary times all around the world our indigenous varietals.
And perfect, because that's what you are doing. I've had quite a few of them. Tell us about the region, Campania, but specifically Tufo and the soils there.
Yeah, it's definitely, we are, first of all, don't expect the Campania, of Capri and the Amalfi Coast and Naples, unfortunately. You're going to get much more rain when you come 40, 25, 30 miles inland on east. We are enclosed in an area called Irpinia, which is, in the center of Campania, is enclosed by mountains. So we have approximately 200 days of rain, so even more than Piedmont. So it's a fake south, which is something then we found back in the wine. But at the same time, I think besides the climate, I think what's most intriguing is actually the soil, as you mentioned, because it's very diversified, but in the Greco in particular, which is in the Tufo area, so Greco di Tufo literally is a DOCG, and literally means the Greco grape coming from the Tufo town or 8 towns surrounding Tufo. In this area, the vines grow on chalky soil, full of mineral. So the minerality that we will see when we just are gonna taste the wine, the sapidity, is not coming from volcanic origin of the soil in this case, but is coming from literally having mineral stones and mineral and even mines, sulfurous mines in particular, underneath the level of the ground where the vine gets its food and its its water and its nutrients.
Yeah. No, and not to be confused with Tufa, which is from the soil in different places of France, but yeah. But also Italy can always be that confusing place where it's either a place like Barolo or grape of a place such as Greco de Tufo.
Italy is too confusing. I agree with you, but that's the beauty of it. And
you just have to keep trying new wines and discovering them all.
Exactly. You need to drink a lot in order to learn. Actually, Tufo means chalk in Italy, but the soil are partially chalky. But in reality, Tufo in this case is the name of a town. And Greco di Tufo, which is one of our 3 DOCGs, is the only region of Italy having 3 DOCGs. Greco di Tufo means the Greco grape, which comes from the Greek over 2 millennia ago. It was brought in southern Italy from the Tufo town and its surroundings. About the Greco grape, it's interesting to know that Plinius in this Naturalis Historia, we're talking about the textbook of the Romans 2 millennia ago, he was already writing, Greco wine was so precious that when there were celebrations, it could only be served once. So the others, it could be served more. So it means it was already a very precious wine back in Roman time.
Yeah, and what is the grape like? I mean, what are is it a thin skin, thick skin? What kind of wine does it?
Of course, but it's a wine with a lot of personality. So of course, the grape needs to be complicated. So it has a very thin skin. So the problem with Greco is that, first of all, the yield is very low. So that's why it's so concentrated with such a personality. It is because genetically it's like that, but it's also because, in particular in the summer, being this texture of the soil, the soil doesn't retain water and the vines start suffering because it doesn't rain. Even in our area, it doesn't rain in August. And so the quantity is reduced and it's more concentrated. And the second, as I said at the beginning, the skin is very thin, so you need to be very careful, in particular in harvest, to harvest really at the right time, which in our case, we are one of the latest to harvest. We start in October, so we really need to be very attentive in order to get the right maturity of the grape.
Yeah, so let's taste this wine and talk a little bit about those characteristics of the soil and the grape and how they come together, because obviously nobody's taken Greco and taken off with it in California, Australia. So obviously this mix of the place and the grape are one of those magical.
Definitely. Greco di Tufo is a very good explanation of what this French concept of terroir, because Greco is a pretty neutral varietal. If you plant Greco somewhere else, actually it's the terroir coming out. There are varietals that are more distinctive themselves. Greco is pretty neutral. So the combination between the varietal and actually the soil we've been talking about makes the difference in this wine. I think what's most striking for a white wine is it's already the color, because it's vivid, but it's quite intense. You already understand that there is a body and a structure in it, which is not just an aperitif wine, so a wine very light, all in the nose. What I like about Greco is that actually the nose is just, the surface. So most often, in particular the aromatic wines, the Greco is not particularly aromatic, as there are other varietals that are more. The nose is just the beginning, and the real journey is in the mouth, which is normal what you do in a red wine. So it's interesting because it's a full-bodied white wine. Now the color is vivid and intense, but it's not light. And then when you smell in the nose, you of course have these primary, so-called primary flavors of the grape, so pear, peach, white flowers in particular. But then you understand there is some balsamic note, and there are some elements that are related to the soil texture. And the soil, you cannot, of course, smell minerality, but you start understanding, like when you have a match, you light the match, and then you smell this. You start understanding this kind of smell, which then is clear when you taste it. Because when you taste the wine, I think the opening is all about, the freshness and the acidity. The acidity is at 7% when we harvest, which is one of the highest actually in Europe. And but at the same time, I think the aftertaste in a way confirms what I was saying before, I hope so at least, that the aftertaste is very, very long, and it almost leaves you this sapid, this salinity on your tongue.
Or almost like a almond skin.
Correct.
Yeah, that kind of.
Some people think the almond is pretty typical of Greco, both in the nose and in mouth, and is not related to any oak aging. We don't do any oak aging here.
I know.
But you may guess, no, because of this, this kind of structure and this long
texture. That there's so much texture, and I can kind of tell just because of the acidity and the lightness. But yeah, there's texture and there's some weight there. But that's the grape. That's the soil. That's not any oak. You do all stainless?
Soil. That's the soil, and it ages. Yeah. It also ages quite well for a white wine. It ages pretty well.
Yeah, it's so complex and interesting. What do you like to eat with this?
I'll go very traditional, mozzarella with this. It's a very nice pairing because it plays both cards. Is the contrast between the richness, the milk side of the mozzarella with this acidity and freshness, and then they get along with the salinity, because they get along with the taste. So for me, is the best pairing, and it's of course very typical of our area. So it's the pairing I would recommend.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Although I have to say that after a long day with really young children, you could also just go for a cheese stick, a string cheese.
Why not? Perfect.
Just go for it.
Perfect.
No, but I've been there, but this would that would go so well with mozzarella caprese salad and something along those lines. So that's beautiful. So thank you so much. It's my favorite. I haven't had it in a while, and it's so nice to kind of revisit my Greco di Tufo. So thank you. Okay, Roberto, we're moving into Piedmonte.
Here we are.
Barolo, the wine of kings, the king of wines, right?
Right. So
exactly. And so I want you, tell us a little bit about the beginnings of Fontanafredda and how that timeline kind of coincides with that of Barolo.
Yeah. Okay. We are definitely the representative of a region which is well known in the world, in the wine world, Piedmont, and also the fact that Fontanafredda has a royal history, so a history which is related to the king, the first king of Italy, Victor Emmanuel II, was previously king of Piedmont, but he became a king of Italy because was the king of unified Italy in 1861. But 3 years earlier, in 1858, he acquired this estate that you can see in this picture in the middle of the Langhe region, the largest contiguous estate in a region where the land property is highly fragmented into a huge number of smaller landowners. The king wanted to acquire this estate in order to start to produce wine, but following a very old tradition of the royal family, he decided also to build up a village, a real village. And the picture that we have seen before with the stripes on the buildings it's an iconic image that represents our village, and it is definitely remind and recalled also in our label. This kind of ochre and round color, which were the colors of the Savoy family. During just before the Second World War, the company was sold and to a bank, and in 2018 was acquired by a Piemontese entrepreneur, Oscar Farinetti. Oscar Farinetti is also the founder and the owner of Italy, which is the temple of Italian food and wine, with stores also in the United States. And so since then, we started a new life in a way.
Yeah, but there's still a lot of wonderful history there. So, and with that evolution, maybe you can talk a little bit about the evolution as it pertains to the effort towards sustainability and what you call the green renaissance.
Yes, it was something which is in our DNA, not recently, but since many years, since decades, because we started this project in 1990, and actually with the harvest, with the 2018 harvest, Fontanafredda became the largest certified organic estate in Piedmont. But our responsibility is not only to manage our vineyards in a more sustainable way, but to lead and to lead the entire territory, the community of the vine growers, which are related to us, because we have a network of more than 400 farmers who bring their grapes to us, and we are helping them to convert their agricultural model into a more sustainable model, so an organic one. So this is our most important purpose and most important responsibility now, because it's relatively easy to do and to manage your vineyard in a sustainable way, because you are the owner and you can decide to do what you want, but it's much more difficult to convince a farmer to follow you in this direction. So this is, I think, the most important point in this renaissance.
Yes, especially these days. Yes, we're all realizing that. So, well, let's talk a little bit about Barolo and Nebbiolo, because Barolo and Nebbiolo, and just like what we were talking about with Prosecco and the Glera grape, and then we're talking about Greco and in Tufo, and so much of Italy is this, terroir, as the French say, but this combination of grape and place. And I think that Barolo and Nebbiolo are such a magical example of that. What makes it so magical?
It's, we are lucky, as I told earlier. I think that Italy is a land of biodiversity. We are lucky because we have a huge number of indigenous varieties, varietals that found the perfect habitat in a specific terroir, and it is exactly what happened with Nebbiolo, because Nebbiolo has found these perfect conditions only in Piedmont, especially in the tiny region around the town of Alba, so the Barolo and the Barbaresco area, because Nebbiolo has a lot of similarities with another very, very important variety, which is Pinot Noir. Nebbiolo is very sensitive to the climate, to the weather condition, is very sensitive to the soil and to the interaction between the soil and the climate. So it's difficult for Nebbiolo to find the perfect habitat. So in the Langhe, we have a climate which is typically characterized by two main features, because we are surrounded by the Alps, by the mountain, but we have also the influence in a way by the balmy Mediterranean Sea. And this creates a nice day and night variation in terms of temperature, which is perfect for the maturation of this late ripening variety. And also the soil that Nebbiolo requires has to be mainly composed by calcareous marl, some limestone, and this is exactly the composition that we can find in the Langhe region. So this combination of components make the perfect condition for Nebbiolo and for producing wines with great structure, great complexity, with a long aging potential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they absolutely do. And Nebbiolo always, when you first start tasting wine, it's always a shock to see this very light colored wine that delivers the tannin and the structure that it does, or the aging potential. But I want to taste the wine and maybe kind of talk us through what we're getting in the wine through aromas and flavors and structure, and how that represents Nebbiolo, especially in Barolo, and maybe even just Serralunga, if there's any specifics coming out there.
And actually, the Barolo that we are tasting is a single village Barolo, what we know as a commune Barolo, which is one of the trend, the new trend in the Barolo region. So to dedicate a Barolo to a single village, because the Barolo area is composed by 11 villages, And there are some villages which are considered more important in terms of the structure and the complexity that can give it. Serralunga d'Alba, which is our hometown, is one of these villages. So now it's a huge strength because there are a lot of producers who are presenting this kind of a single village Barolo because it gives a more sense of place. We were the very first to launch a single village Barolo in 1988 to represent perfectly the terroir of Serralunga. So the color, as you said, it's a typical red garnet color of Barolo with this kind of ruby highlight. And then the most important feature is definitely the aroma, because Barolo has a very intense and complex bouquet, which is composed by different elements. So we can start from the fruit, could be the typical woodland berries, but immediately after we have the explosion of flowers, so especially roses and violets, which are typically from this variety. And then after that we have the spices, the balsamic, means the herbal, eucalyptus, so more mineral aroma, which create an incredible mix of explosion of sensations. And then the taste is definitely, it's dry, but it's rich in, it's fresh because it's rich in acidity, but at the same time we have the tannins, which are very, very fine grained tannins, which gives a very velvety texture to the wine, because the tannins are important. We are talking about Serralunga, so Serralunga is the place where you can have the more powerful and structured Barolo, but it's still very elegant because all the components are there in a great balance.
Oh, yeah, this is beautiful, and it's kind of what we were talking about Greco de Tufo, which has more of a subtle nose because it's not as aromatic, but the palate is super layered, whereas this is an aromatic grape, but they both deliver such complexity, and even the freshness of the Prosecco, they're all so different, but they give so much. So how long would you keep this wine from an aging perspective?
It's
I love it right now. It's cold.
I think that Barolo in general has an important aging potential. Depends on the vintage, depends on the terroir. So when we talk about Serralunga, is because the Serralunga terroir is very poor in terms of organic components. So the yield of production is very low. The concentration of the grapes is it's amazing. So generally we produce more structured and powerful Barolo. So potentially Barolo from Serralunga are the Barolos which can have this kind of very long life that can be minimum 20-25 years, but if the wine is stored in a good way, we can also go for 30, 40, 50 years, and this is the reason why all the Barolo producers like to keep in their cellar a percentage of the annual production, and to release these bottles year by year, because we want to give a future also for this wine, because we never know how the wine, how a Nebbiolo, how a Barolo can evolve in the bottle, and it is always a discovery. It's something new that every time when we open a bottle, we can discover.
Yeah. It's a time capsule. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So food, a Barolo is wonderful food. I was there. I forget the name of the dish. It's a 40 yolks, 40 egg yolks with pasta and truffles on top. What's it called?
The pasta di tagliarine.
Yes, that's the one I ate 3 times. Like, it's so good.
With the truffle again.
Okay, we'll do it. We'll do it again. What is your favorite pairing with Barolo?
When we would like to find the perfect match of Barolo, definitely the red meat dishes. In our region, the most important food pairing with Barolo is the typical brasato al Barolo, which is the braised beef in the Barolo wine. I know that it is a little bit difficult to prepare, to cook at home. But we can match this kind of wine also with a grilled filet steak. Even if personally I prefer to match the wine with some nice mature cheeses. And Piedmont is very rich in cheese, so it's you can find a lot of possibilities here. Wonderful. But it's also nice for a pleasant after dinner company.
I would drink all of these.
Mediterranean wine during a mindfulness session. Exactly. You can match the Barolo.
Yeah, and but to finish off, I also want to hear, and I'll come back to Diva Antonio also, but Roberto, what were your favorite pairings with a Prosecco or a Greco di Tufo? Do you have any favorites we'll start with Prosecco?
With Prosecco, I definitely like some nice prosciutto crudo, some sweet crudo, Italian crudo. For example, San Daniele. Okay. And with Greco di Tufo, I have in mind plenty of fish courses in Campania. There are a lot of possibilities, like in order to enjoy this wine with great fish.
Yeah, it's perfect. And Diva, what about you with Greco di Tufo? If you get any taste matchup.
Greco di Tufo, I think I would go for some shellfish. Mozzarella first because I love it, but then I will go for some shellfish as well. And the Barolo, I think the braised beef will be my first choice, but also some good cheeses, aged cheeses. I would love to try it as well.
Yeah. And Antonio? Oh, sorry.
Or some game, some.
Okay, yeah, something I feel like cooked where it's falling off the bone kind of meat.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Antonio, what about you with Prosecco?
I personally had a wonderful experience with Prosecco and oysters, which is unusual, but it was a very intriguing experience. And then with Barolo, I'm sorry to stimulate your memory again. I would go with truffles. For sure.
It just makes me realize I need to
myself.
Yeah. We will come back to visit. We haven't actually ever hit the South.
There is a subliminal message behind this kind of.
Always.
Well, once things are flowing again in the travel world, we will do that. So thank you, Diva, Antonio, and Roberto for being here, staying up past your bedtime, talking about these wines. It's just a great reflection on Italian Signature Wines Academy. You all clearly have those values, the passion toward making these great wines, and that alliance, and promoting these authentic wines through Italy. So if these wines are still available on Wine.com, as are many Italian wines worth discovering, obviously. So thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Hope to welcome you and all your Wine.com friends to Italy and to visit our wineries and our estates.
We will bring our whole friends and family crew. Don't you worry.
Okay.
Thank you.
With the truffles. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It's both a science and a form of high art. It's made from the combination of grapes, sunlight, rain, soil, and time. It's raised up in the moments that matter. It's wine. And we are Wine.com. We have the largest wine selection in the world, online sommeliers with free advice, and now our powerful new app puts the entire world of wine in your hands. Wine.com. Seriously passionate about wine. Download our free app today.